This video is really hard to make, but I want to challenge myself. And I want to continue to set out to do the thing that I always wanted to do on social media, which was be incredibly realistic, was to represent myself and the brand. I almost said character, but almost the character, the brand, the name that I've created for myself, to be that person, to represent that person, but to be myself as well, and to unblur those lines. So that way, when you're watching me, even if I'm playing games or even if I'm talking about real issues, it's still the same person, same energy. You can tell I don't put on like some crazy YouTuber voice all the time, and it's just me. And so this is a very hard conversation to have. And I think the implications of this conversation and of even doing what I'm doing are the thing that scare me the most. I want to talk about how on a lot of issues I'm very moderate. And I want to talk about what that looks like in today's world. I'm on Twitter a lot. And if you're also a Twitter user, I'm never going to call it X. If you're also a Twitter user, I think you see it too. You see the crazy polarization. You see the For You page that has political just discourse flooding it. Videos of this person and why they're so bad, and Democrats and leftists and rightists and extremists and radicals and these issues and that issues, this social issue, that social issue. And it seems never ending. And, I have to speak from like a generational standpoint too. I'm 30 years old. I remember these conversations not being like this. Granted, the topics were a little different. Granted, the political climate was very different. Granted, it was many years ago. But I remember it not being like this. I remember it not feeling so polarized. And I remember it not being so connected and plugged in because of the version of social media and the internet we had back then versus what we have today. And so every other tweet is about how the right is crazy and they're doing these crazy things, or how the left is crazy and they're doing these things, and how these people are radicalized, and how basically we just can't have conversations anymore. And as someone that feels very moderate left-leaning, I identify myself as politically like a socialist, like a democratic socialist that's moderately left-leaning. That's how I've always felt. It's how I still feel. I feel like I used to be pretty far leaning to the left. Barking. Pretty far leaning to the left, and I've pulled in quite a bit. But I'm Democratic. I've always voted Democratic, and I feel strongly about the left side social and political issues. But this particular topic is a social issue. This particular topic is about gender identity and the notion of transphobia and homophobia and hatred, specifically hatred. And I could rope in racism and lots of form of bigotry. But what I feel like I'm seeing personally is that I feel like the majority of people are actually moderate. They have their beliefs. It leans a little bit. If this is that middle line, they have their belief, they're here. They have their belief, they're here. But it feels like the vocal minority is always here, is always on the far ends. The tweets that I see, we shouldn't be, what did I see? The Canadian Prime Minister, President, whoever the hell it is, some dude running for office, I don't know, saying that we shouldn't be tricked into believing that there are more genders. You have Democrats and Republicans that are, or not even just Democrats or Republicans, just people on Twitter that are full on basically anything that is against any version of trans rights, LGBTQ rights is a phobia, obia, right? Transphobia, homophobia. And so there's no room to exist in this space. But honestly, I do honestly exist in this space. And so I think the scary part about this conversation and why, I think the implications of this do scare me is because I would never identify myself as transphobic or homophobic. Never. I can't even fathom the idea of someone thinking that of me, because I feel so welcoming and caring for others, whoever the fuck they are. I don't care what people do, but I also understand that ignorance can lead to bad circumstances for other people. And so I have to be comfortable and willing to concede the fact that my beliefs to somebody else is going to be homophobic or transphobic or bigoted. I have to concede that fact. But that doesn't mean that I have to change. And I don't think that it means that I don't think that I can change. Like I have my beliefs, and my beliefs are that I just want happiness and security and care for all. It's like across the board. I'm not just talking about, trans rights and LGBTQ rights. I just mean anybody. I'm a democratic socialist. I want people to be healthy. I want people to be cared for. I wish that in the United States, our countrymen and women were just cared for more. I wish that we gave a fuck about the people that were on the corner and battling homelessness. I wish we cared more about minority neighborhoods and minority issues. I wish we cared more about all of these things, because it feels like you have the haves and the have-nots, and they're constantly at war with each other. But in that same breath, there are things about, LGBTQ rights or LGBTQ movements that I don't necessarily agree with. I don't particularly agree with any version of inclusion of, speaking about gender, sexuality with children. I don't. And while I can sit here and say that, and I know that I mean that honestly, I know that somebody else is going to hear those words and say, I told you, I knew he was transphobic, I knew he was bigoted. And yet in my heart, I don't feel that way at all. And, I've honestly struggled back and forth with this one thing that people say about me, about calling me transphobic, because of a situation where I defended a friend because she got herself into a mess, and I had a private conversation with her where I gave her the benefit of the doubt. And I chose to believe that when she told me, oh, I didn't mean it that way, I didn't recognize this was what was happening. And, whenever she gave me her side of the story, sorry if I just beat the shit out of my mic, I chose to believe that, because that's what I wanted to do with a person close to me. I wanted to have a conversation with them and give them the benefit of the doubt, because that's what I think that you would do for someone you cared for. If my mother got online and posted some really hateful stuff, I wouldn't blast her on Facebook, because that's where she's at. I would have a conversation with my mother. Now, granted, that's just hypothetical, but I would go to my mother and I would say, Mom, what is this? Why do you feel this way? What is going on here? And we would talk about it, and I would give her that benefit of the doubt to explain it to me, or at least just the opportunity to explain it to me. And so on various issues, this is just the one I'm talking about today, I do feel very centrist. I do feel, left leaning on this, where I do believe that these people, LGBTQ, should have rights. I absolutely believe that. I want to use every pronoun that you present to me. I want to make sure that the name that you give me is the name that I use. I want you to feel respected and cared for, and I want there to be literal respect and care for you in the world. But I also am someone, and this goes down into my gaming world, where I recognize that some of this shit's just not going away. I've been alive 30 years, and hatred has always been there. And I think that this version of a utopian world that we're chasing is the ideal. And the ideals are what you chase. You do chase that dream of a society where everybody's happy and healthy and cared for and respected. But you're never really getting there. You're just always fighting for it. And that's kind of the beauty of it, right? And it's kind of the beauty of our mortality as humans, right? Like, I would love to live forever and to achieve all my dreams. But you know what? We're here for a finite amount of time. And that's kind of the beauty of our mortality. And it's kind of the beauty of recognizing that there's bad shit in the world too, is that on the other side of that, on the beautiful side of love and care and friendship and compassion and empathy, you can recognize that you have that in your circle, in your society, in your community, in your world, because you choose to. And those are the people you keep close, and those are the people that you fight and advocate for, despite the other side, despite the other voices and the other words that are being said. And so part of this is almost a confession of my true thoughts, right? Which the irony is that I don't feel bad about. I don't feel bad about my true thoughts, because I know that in my heart, I want to be inclusive and do the right thing. And I think that I'm doing enough of the right thing. But at the same time, saying that is the confession, the admittance of my bigotry, I suppose, in a sense, where someone will believe that. Well, someone can even justify it. And I'm not here to say you're wrong. I'm not here to change how people feel about the things that I say. But it is hard to deal with it. It is hard to deal with seeing someone say something terrible about you, and to know that, at the furthest end of what that word means, transphobic or bigoted or hatred, you're not quite there. Like if this is the furthest side of hatred, I know I'm not there. I feel like I'm on this side, but maybe in your eyes, you can pull me over. You can spill me over the edge because of a perspective I have of saying like not including children in gender identity discussions, or feeling like yes, I will use whatever name you want me to, but but me feeling like I'm a realist and saying you also have to be tough in this world. And I can't even imagine how hard that must be to have other people not be willing to give you the respect and the validation of your own identity, but it's your own, right? And so even now I feel terrified to think that I'm recording this and I might release it, because someone's going to take this. Someone will take this and say, I knew he was a bigot. I knew he was full of hatred. I knew he was all of these terrible things. And to me, I feel like I just want to explain how being a moderate and being someone that can have a different perspective from you, even if it's not a far off perspective, even a slightly change in perspective from you, can still be someone that has respect and care for you and still wants nothing but the best in your life. Um, I see a lot of polarization in the social political climate, but in the like capitalist economic climate as well, where brands and companies and games and all of these different entities are also forced to take a stance. The weirdness behind the Bud Light controversy, and the weirdness behind, I think Burger King got themselves into some bullshit too, and the weirdness behind the Nick Merck situation with Call of Duty and on the internet where people are saying similar things about him. The weirdness behind all of this when, people just are different, right? Like on the spectrum of beliefs, you will always have someone that's on the far opposing end of whatever issue it is. Someone is on the complete agreement with your issue, wants full everything that you ask for, the way that you ask for it, and you're going to have a slew of people in between. And I understand how you can look at someone that has opposing views of you and think that that's bad. I do. I really do. But I think that we also need to reel ourselves back in and be willing to have conversations where we're looking at some of the people in the middle that don't mean any harm at all, that don't have any hatred in their hearts at all, that don't mean anything. They just have a slightly different perspective, and be willing to accept them in the grand picture as well. I was going to say accept them as an ally, but I feel like that word has deeper roots now. I feel like that word wouldn't have been appropriate there, but I feel like an ally. And I know that someone can say, you know what, Krashy, you don't get to decide what is and isn't hateful. You don't get to decide what is and isn't racism. You don't get to decide what is and isn't transphobia, bigotry. You don't get to decide these things. You don't get to tell them how they feel. And I agree to some extent. But at the same time, I can still feel how I feel about it, right? I can still feel like I know that I'm not hateful. I can still feel like I know that I mean well and that I'm going to do my best within my beliefs to be inclusive and to say the right things and to treat people with respect, whatever that takes, right? Whatever that takes, except for where I see a line, where I think that, we have to be realistic, where I think that there are things that I'm not going to agree on. And that's with any issue, right? I could sit here and talk about my beliefs on abortion. I'm very pro-choice. I think that people should be able to do with their bodies. Women should be able to do with their bodies what they want to do and choose what's best for their lives. I also think that there's a lot of medical perspectives and angles where it's not the best idea for a woman to be forced to carry a baby to term. But I also do think that it's the death of a child, more or less. Is it a literal child? We could dive into that. What is life? What is the protection of consciousness? When does a fetus feel like a child? We could dive into all of that, and I think that that's a discussion for a different time. But I have beliefs on that, and on that spectrum somewhere, someone is going to disagree with me and say, no, that's killing a child. And it's like, yeah, to some degree, I agree, and we can't allow that because of XYZ reason, because of their political stance, because they're just they're religious, whatever the case may be. So I guess point of today's discussion, and the fear as well, is that I do feel very moderate a lot of the times. And I have personally noticed that over the years, if you are moderate, even if you're leaning aside, you're the bad person. And that sucks. And it's not for me to sit here and say, I don't want to be viewed as the bad person. Please don't look at me that way. But I think for me to be honest, and for me to maybe crack the door open for a little bit of visibility or an inside look that there are probably a lot of people that feel moderately about a lot of issues, and that I don't think that they're necessarily bad people. You know, I think that if you're unwilling to have a conversation, even with the furthest person, and at minimum get to a place where you can say, you know what, I understand your perspective. I've listened to what you had to say. I disagree. I strongly disagree. These are the reasons why. And I can never understand your perspective. I can never, or sympathize with your perspective. I can never get myself there, but these are the reasons why. I think that's the best you can do. And so never stop fighting for what you believe in. Never stop advocating for what you believe is right. But I think that you need to do it in the right way as well. And so I'm not looking to push change. I don't have that kind of platform. I'm not looking to do anything other than to be myself and be realistic on the internet, and to unblur this distorted reality of social media and real life. Yeah, I'm a democratic, socialist, left-leaning, moderate person, socially, politically. I have voted blue my whole life as a Texan. I am someone that has strong feelings about all kinds of issues: gaming, non-gaming, social, political, gun rights as a gun owner in Texas. We could talk about that. Abortion, LGBTQ rights, human rights, global, what's the word I'm looking for? Situations is not right, but yeah. And so this is who I am. And I'm afraid to be honest, but it's what I wanted to set out to do. So, friends, thank you so much for listening to me. Again, I think the craziest part, and I want to acknowledge it and look at it in the face, is that I know that someone will take this and press it further, right? I knew it. This is what he always was. Blah, 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 blah. You know, and then at the same time, I know that somebody might say something as simple as base take. This is why I like you. You're always real. You know, I can see both sides. You know, I sit in the center and I watch everybody argue all day long about all of these different things and all these different issues on this stupid fucking social media platform. But I'm addicted to it. I love Twitter, and I love reading and experiencing these conversations. And sometimes I read what people say and I just think, what a fucking idiot, right? What an absolute lunatic that people could think this way and could want to rob people of their own, and you know, subjective human experience in the way that they want to live it, because I don't want that. I don't want any less rights for people. But I do have my lines, right? And so again, thank you so much for listening. This is just another Just Krashing video. I would love to do more of these where I just talk about any kind of issue and maybe explore the me just being a person in front of a camera avenue of content a little bit more, or from time to time whenever it feels suitable to do so. So I love all of you, I promise. I can be abrasive and a little wild on the internet, but the irony is that I view myself as a good person. I view myself as someone that has a lot of love and respect for all people. I view myself as someone that cares about my countrymen and women and the experiences that they go through, and the plight and the minority issues and the social issues, political issues, etc. Humanity and life is a very interesting experience because, man, it's very complex. And I just try to look at all of it and make the best informed decisions that I can. I try to do my civic duty and vote, and hope that the people that we're voting for and the people that get elected have the best interest of the people that are voting for them. So that's what we do. Thank you so much for listening. As always, be sure to be kind of one another, tell someone you love them, and I'll see you on the next video.